I'm Kat Bell, and today we have exciting updates for Project Hoops. But first, the supplies. We have straight pins, fabric scissors, the McCall costume, supposedly 2-hour easy pattern. And the fabric we'll be using is this gray and white swirly pattern. And of course, my cat has to be in the center of attention. So I have my phone here for the timing purposes. So we'll see how long this actually takes me. 2 hours, easy. I'll be the judge of that. Okay, to start off with, we'll be opening the package. So it comes with 3 instruction papers, and those are mostly for the sewing, but it does have a couple instructional things for when you're cutting out the fabric as well, so like suggested placement of the pattern onto the cloth, which we'll see in the future. Moving on to opening the actual pattern. It is a very large, very thin paper, so it's just very carefully unfolding them and separating the different pieces. And while I'm doing this, I'm just looking to see the different part numbers, and of course Autumn had to come back and try to play with the very soft, very delicate pattern paper. Okay, now that I found the pieces that I am actually going to be using for this project, I'm just cutting along the outer part of the pattern. So I know some people will go, if you're just making it for yourself, you can just go with whatever size you are, but I always just like to leave a little wiggle room for extra seam allowance. And also, since I'm doing one size and I might use other sizes for other people, I always like to just fold the pattern rather than cutting it along that actual seam. That way I can reuse it for multiple sized pieces. And right here there was just this extra line that was wasn't sure. It's what is this? It was just a line for the manufacturers to cut along that edge of the paper. So it's not actually part of the pattern. There was just this extra little triangle on the corner because it is a curved piece, which also comes into play later. Kind of a little bit of a snag there when we're actually putting this down onto the cloth. This particular piece of the pattern has actually 3 different pieces on it, and I'm only cutting out the hood part, which is used for costumes A and B. So that's the only piece I needed, but it also had the collar and a couple other pieces on this same piece of paper. Okay, and we're at 18 minutes and 40 seconds, and we've cut the pattern almost 20 minutes. Now we can move on to the actual fabric. So to start off with, it needs to be unfolded. And I'm used to cutting patterns on a fold, so usually you'll get 2 symmetrical pieces and then spread it open, and that's one side. But this pattern unfortunately is too large for that, so adjustments had to be made. I might need a bigger cutting mat. And now that I got the bigger cutting mat out, we're just unfolding it completely. And it was a lot like making a bed, honestly. And so here I am just stretching out the pattern and realizing, well, one, that we weren't doing it the full length. We weren't doing a full length cloak. What we were trying to do was basically up to the waist is what we wanted. And this is going to take some finagling, and this is where that issue with the curved edge comes into play. Because initially I thought we could just fold the pattern basically in half, but then we wouldn't get that curved edge, and we weren't sure if we could freestyle cut that. So we're having to figure out, one, how actually long to make it, and then two, how to get that curved edge to be the bottom when we're folding the pattern to get what we want. It was a pretty hard struggle, just considering the overall shape of the cape piece and just how thin pattern paper is. And what we ended up doing is, as you see, folding it all kinds of willy-nilly to kind of force it into the shape we wanted, and then eventually pinning it so that it stays together in that formation that we finally got it in. These lines at the bottom were basically just different size things. So the first line is for teen boys and for misses, and the longer one for gentlemen. Although they did have an extra piece for if you wanted to have an even longer cape. And here I am with the pins, and I was just basically trying to figure out which parts to actually pin, because some places had more layers than others. So it was more beneficial to pin it at those thicker ones just to make sure that everything stayed together. Like, there's no point in pinning the top where there's only one layer of paper. Please. Baby. Come on. No. Where's my cat when I need it? Ah, here it is. Over here. Over here, come get it. Come wise. Oh, I get it. No. And I pass it on to someone else. Okay. Ha. Now I fold it like this, yeah? Referring back to the instructions, we realized that we could fold the fabric, but it had to go hamburger rather than hot dog length. Bringing in the pattern, we're trying to get the end of the cloth to line up with the end of the pattern as closely as possible to waste not, want not, and all. And with this fold, we can get the 4 pieces we need, the 2 for the front, and then flipping it around, we can get the 2 for the back out of this one fold in the cloth. Finally, bringing in our pins, we can get the pattern pinned down to the cloth. It is now time to bring out our handy dandy fabric scissors. And just making sure everything's laying flat to make it easy to cut. I'm just going around the pattern. And I pretty much go like right up against the pattern since I already left the seam allowance when I cut the pattern. So that's one piece down, just depin it, fold this and set it aside, and then prep the cloth for the second round of pinning. Then I just repeat that process for the second set, and I actually made a mistake cutting it exactly the same as the first piece when the front and back are 2 different pieces. The shoulder part is a little different, so I do go back and fix that later. I didn't realize till I was about ready to sew, actually. Like I said, waste not, want not, these longer scraps will be used for making the covers for the hoop skirt. Moving on to the hood. This is where I had left the video last week. This was a little bit easier than the cape part for several reasons, one of which being the hood is a much smaller piece, so less unwieldy, and 2, because we're not doing any kind of editing, I suppose is an appropriate word for it. But yeah, so there's no modifications there. That's a good term. There's no modifications to this part. This one is just going to be as the pattern suggests. Also with this one, we were able to go back to the regular folds. So I could just fold it along the crease that the fabric already had, which is also a lot simpler. And then we just clean this up and we can go sew. Addressing that mistake I made earlier, basically I just went back and picked one of the 2 sets and made what was 2 backs into a back and 1 front. First order of business, turn it on. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's working. According to the instructions, when making the cape, you start with the back. So the 2 backs go together with the straight edge first. So we're just using the serger to make that seam. Since this first one is just a straight seam, I didn't feel the need to pin it together. So I just went ahead and just went for it. Like I said in my cat blanket video, we are just the guide for the machine. Basically, I'm just making sure that the fabric is going evenly and it's only cutting off the edge that I don't want. And then I just kind of snip off those excess pieces. As for the front panel, what I started off doing was serging the straight end. And then I realized I had to match this piece to the back. And it would have to be outside to outside, and so basically would have to line up the shoulders. Time out. Okay, so I'm gonna need some, oops. I want our timer back on. Here I go pinning the panels into place, and this is mostly just because it is on a curve, so a straight line is pretty easy to manage and maintain without the pins, but going on a curve is a little more tricky. Once again, I am only the guide, the machine knows what it's doing, and it basically pulls the fabric as well. I'm just holding on either side just to give it that extra guidance so the fabric doesn't go all cattywampus. And then we unstabify it.
It rolled under.
God, sneaky little bugger. I need a pin cushion. Oh, that was terrible. I'm a terrible pet owner.
So that is our joke nickname for when he's due for his vaccines.
Well, yes. Okay, break time. Moving on to the hood, this one required a pleat, so I had to go back and look at the pattern to see where to actually have the pleat. And then I pin it here. Yeah, is this okay? So to make pleat in each hood on outside, bring line with small circles to line with large circles. Are we supposed to sew up there? Or is that just showing the pleatiness? Remember, we were serging everything, so. Do I need the sewing machine for this?
Okay. Looking at it.
Okay, time out.
I need this one now. Okay.
So it's set on 0, right? What is this squiggle line?
In all honesty, I don't actually know how to use this one. I just know how to thread it.
Okay, I think we just need this one. Should be fine. The instructions called for a basting stitch across the pleat, And according to Google anyway, a basting is a temporary straight stitch used to hold layers together until a final stitch is sewn. Which makes sense for this. Basically, it's just a small stitch over the pleat to make sure it stays in that spot for when you attach the hood to the rest of the cape. My first thought with seeing this term was, I thought we were sewing, not making a turkey.
Oh, you're not threaded, are you?
Time out again! Works better when it's...
When getting things on and off that one, you have to be careful lest it unthread itself.
Okay, well. My sister, my hero, the light of my life, came to my rescue and was helping rethread the machine for me. It has some sort of funny doohickey that's supposed to automatically do it, but that one didn't seem to work. But overall, we did get it fixed. Imagine I can't do it. Yep, first try.
We're definitely putting this on the blooper reel.
After some time, we finally got the machine to cooperate, and we can move on to the second hood. Well, second half of the hood. It's all one hood. Okay. Now I don't need this machine anymore, right? Or I need to sew this to the other, or can I serge that one?
Let me look at the thing again.
Show the instructions. Okay, so for the hood, the next step was to line up the edges of the hood and then to stitch them into place. So just pinning, since it's once again a curve for the shape of the head, and then just going in with the serger. With the pieces finally together and just, one hood now instead of two separate pieces, I'm finally going to serge that straight edge. That way everything lines up. If I had done that at the beginning, the edges might not have been exactly the same. With this, I make sure that everything's even, especially in that middle seam. And finally, we can begin pinning the hood onto the cape. And for this, basically, I had started at the seam from the hood, matching that to the seam from the back, that very first seam that we made. And then just stretching it along the edge. So I basically did that middle seam, and then I pinned the edges, and then I went back in through to make sure everything else was even. And then it was just a matter of serging the two pieces together. And just very carefully going and making sure that everything was still lined up, and carefully unpinning as I go. That way there's no holes from the hood to the back. Finally, I'm just serging the bottom part of the cape to make sure that those 4 panels for the back and front all end the same and have a nice clean edge. That way there's no fraying and everything is even and there's no messy bits at the edge. And that pretty much finishes up the hood. The The seam for the hood and the seam for the back didn't quite line up, but that's fine. It's hard to see when the hood's on anyway. And overall, it was just under 2 hours. Easy is still debatable, but overall it worked out pretty well. And that's it for this video. Bye!